Good afternoon. How are you? Well, we're in the 70s today, mid-70s. It's very pleasant out, no rain, and that's the TJ Review, Thomas Jefferson Weather Report. I got out and around a little bit today, did a small amount of campaigning. What else could you do on a Saturday? Well, tomorrow I'll be working on my cases a little bit. So what's new? Well, there's some good news in the sense that we're not going to have a shutdown. The House had a vote 335 to 91, and that meant that there were 90 R's that Republicans that voted against a stopgap measure, if you would, which kicks the can down the road for 45 days. Missing is any funds for Ukraine, and that's unfortunate. And Marcy Kaptur, who is, I believe, the head of the Ukraine caucus, she's not happy with that, but she agreed to vote for the package anyhow. By the time you read this, if everything goes well, the Senate will have voted approval before the deadline, and the White House probably will sign it. I say probably. I'm only talking about logistics. I'm not talking about what the ultimate decision would be. So, what is the effect of this? It is annoying that in order to get this, we have to say the funds for Ukraine are not included. The flip side of that is there's talk that it will be taken care of anyhow in another way. So we'll have to wait and see if that piece comes together before we rain down hell and damnation upon those who fail to get those funds in place, because I can't imagine anything worse among the elements of our foreign policy right now. That is to keep up the pressure that we support those that are against invasions of adjoining land masses under pretext and killing so many people in violation of international laws. Maybe Jack Smith can take care of this stuff once he puts our boy Trump in prison. The Senate has to vote, I believe, 100%, and they may do that by just a voice vote. I'm not sure that's what they'll do, but that's what we've done a lot when I was up on the Hill, and the procedures and rules as to that matter haven't changed. So let's talk about Trump a little bit. His Monday is a day of reckoning, the trial about what to do with the empire of trust, empire in new trust, and not Trump's, is going to happen going forward. So there's that. But Jack Smith is concerned, and he filed a reply Friday, so this is Saturday, and he replied it, I think, late in the day. And what it basically said is, this is a real problem here, and it continues even as the motion is pending. Now, let me explain that. Government made a motion that there should be some sort of gag order about threats to a variety of people about the case that's pending in the U.S. District Court in D.C. before Judge Chutkan. And then Trump answered basically saying some variations of free speech, and it's not what you say it is, and they tried to answer the different matters. The government came back Friday evening, and that's what I'm referring to, and they said, hey, this is still going on. He's still doing this stuff. And we know in other jurisdictions they're concerned about gag orders, so I think there's a certain inevitability about these gag orders because of Trump continuously doing what he's doing. Now, if he wanted to dodge the claim, he would have stopped until this was behind us, forcing everybody to rev it up again afterwards. But he's like a child. It has to happen now, gimme, and so he goes forward. So we have him attacking, while the motion's pending, attacking the prosecutor, special counsel, and judges, and the vice president, and also attacking the defense secretary, and talking about how execution would be appropriate. Well, this is just not tolerable. This is not allowable. This is what a dictator does. And I think the combination of what's happening on Monday, which is the beginning of closing off his purse to the funds, and the kind of power he needs to keep going, I think it's good that that's probably going to close him down financially. Well, or at least make it very difficult, because he's going to have to do some moving around of things. He'd have to do it legally, so he'd probably do it illegally, because I think that may be the only way he can accomplish it, if the court's orders and indications are that we're going to separate you from all these different businesses. So I think that's good news. Now, what else do we have going on? We have lots of things going on. The fun thing is that in the Central Park Zoo, I don't know if you've ever been to the Central Park Zoo in New York, they have a nice little zoo there, close to the southernmost part of the park, close to there are entry points at Fifth Avenue. And as you know, there were terrible rains there. So a zoo sea lion found that because of the rains, he could escape his enclosure and go around in the park. Now, instead of this having an unhappy ending, somebody stupidly shooting him with something other than a dart to put him to sleep, once he was out and roaming around, he went back to what he knew as enclosure. So that was the end of that incident. And then there's the bittersweet but happy overall story about former President Carter. 99 tomorrow, but they held the celebration today just in case the government was shut down, compromising the celebration they wanted to put together. And that's kind of nice. Now, I don't know about you, but when I talk to somebody in their 80s and 90s, I say, so how'd you get here? They often say they don't think about it. The other thing that they say are how they did it. I stopped drinking. I was careful what I ate. I kept my weight down. In the case of Jimmy Carter, the claim his grandson says is that he exercised. And he jogged, or he rode a bicycle, and that's not been true in recent, weeks or months, because his strength and health have been seriously compromised. But that's how he got to 99, and it's a model for us. Now, not everybody can exercise in a way that's effective, because, this thinking meat, this machinery, it wears down. I think it's basically a rear guard action from 30 on. But, you stop producing some of the things that make you powerful. Holly worked with a guy at AOL in their 20s, and he used to come in and say he had to get married. He had to find a woman he would marry in his 20s, because everybody in his family got fat and turned bald. And so he had to find a woman to marry him before that happened. Well, I suppose that happens, but, we've seen enough people that people make a way for a variety of reasons besides vanity as to who their opposite number is. And over time, I've seen a lot of people that have managed to keep a marriage together longer than myself. Holly is my final marriage, and with all due regard to the good times I had with very good people before, Holly is my... I learned something by the time Holly and I met, I guess, and we both fit really well through good and bad times. And I don't mean us personally, I mean the things that can affect you. So that's something to keep in mind when you're thinking of Carter. I've met him a couple of times and spoken to him, and he obviously is a student of retail politics, and he's that way. He would have done something like politics if he didn't do politics, I think. And he was gentle and accessible, and his wife was still compos mentis, didn't have any challenges herself. And so it was a kick meeting them. I met him at one of the presidential conventions. So that's him. On an unpleasant note, something that bothers me personally and has, well, since I found out these things, and it is that, I was a registered voting BIC, Bronx Irish Catholic, and until I met a brilliant lady from Oberlin, and she asked me to help convert her to the Catholic religion. And I'm not saying this to upset any of you, but I found, as others do, that when I was trying to explain these propositions to her, having not really questioned them as a kid, that I shouldn't be doing that, and I told her that. But the thing that upset me wasn't so much the ethics and good behavior drawn from, Roman senators, Stoics, and others, and Aristotle, and a whole variety of precedent wisdom that sort of showed the way of life, but not necessarily in a spiritual way, sort of in a right-minded way. But then we had these disclosures about how, priests in positions of authority over the young were taking advantage of them, abusing them. And this leads me to the story in Baltimore that the diocese is going to bankruptcy court because the law in Maryland allows for prosecuting one of these abuse cases without regard to the statute of limitations. And the church, the Catholic Church, had tried to resist this provision. They did not succeed. The provision passed. And so now they're going into bankruptcy to limit their exposure to complainants who were abused. There are a lot of challenges to what we do with our time and how we make things better. And I couldn't go to a church that hadn't routed this misbehavior out. It's just unforgivable. And I know others may feel differently. Their pastor is not this or that. But I've been wary to contribute funds or time, given that I think this abuse is just undeniable, and it's in a lifetime. And I see this a lot in criminal law. The question is, John Jones, made-up name, has been a good person in so many ways, but then he does something terrible. Okay, so maybe it's not a murder, but maybe it's something else. And it's interesting that in my mind, when I said murder, I was thinking of mirror. And I think the reason I was doing that is that if that worst act mirrors who you really are without your persona, then how does that balance against everything else? Is everything else as a feather, to borrow an image from Mideast religions? Is it forgivable? Should a person like that wear a scarlet letter? I think so. I don't know a way around it. And to my friends who say, oh, what can you do, good or bad, and so forth, and I tell them, there's so much good thinking over the existence of all history to study, to guide you into how to live. And I'm confused because I was taught by Jesuits, and they teach you how to use your mind, and they're terrified when you do. But they really do teach you. And I had some of the most illuminating teachers who gave me the advantages of thinking and analyzing things and how to study and learn things in a way that's got me through to where I am today. And so, like most things in life, there's a real conflict between what we know and what we choose to do in some sort of hybrid compromise way. But for me, there's no room in church like that. In fact, I took my daughter to a church in my community where I had struck up a really good friendship with a Franciscan who was in charge of the church, charge of the diocese, I guess, whatever it is, in Loudoun County. And he and I would talk about these things from our own honest perspectives. He was originally from Ravenna, if I remember, and he was one of these street kids, Ravenna style. And one priest asked him, did he want to get an education? If you just get in my truck, I'll take you off and we'll teach you. And he did. And this is like the other way, the better way. And he had developed such a mind and such a good heart. You know, he'd say things like, some days it's hard to pray at the end of the day because I'm so full of what I feel. And then I went to Mass, trying to expose my daughter to his thinking, going to Sunday Mass many years ago now. And then he was sent out of the diocese. They didn't like the cut of his sails. And they had a diocesan priest. And I was sitting in a pew behind a woman, very nicely dressed, minimalist, black or dark blue, wearing gloves. And when they started talking about in church, about abortion, her hands were at her side, and I could see her right hand, and it formed into a fist as the priest spoke. And that's the last time I've been at a church service with my daughter, because I didn't want her exposed to that. I wanted her to independently come to something other than fear and loathing. So that's my take on this marvelous Saturday. And so I hope to be out again tomorrow, and I'll talk to you from my cathedral of trees. Makes you think that nature may have been the right religion before people got into it with all sorts of semi-political angles. All the best. Bye-bye.